Revealed, 10 spine-chilling and terrifying Kentucky hauntings that will leave you cursed forever. Claire had always thought of Melrose as a haven, a place where the breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and laughter echoed through sunlit streets. But that serenity crumbled when her father passed away. Now, standing in front of his old house, a once vibrant structure now draped in shadows, Claire felt an unmistakable chill creeping up her spine. The creaks of the floorboard sounded less like a symphony of memories and more like a funeral dirge. As the sun sank behind the hills, the darkness revealed itself, creeping into corners like secrets just waiting to be unveiled. With each passing night, the air felt thick with unease. Claire tried to keep a smile for Jake, but even he could feel it. His laughter, once bright, began to fade to tremors. In his little hands were drawings, dark figures looming over cheerful scenes, a stark contrast to their sun-drenched existence. "Mom, who are they?" Jake's innocent eyes held a fear far beyond his years, and every question was a dagger to Claire's heart. Then came whispers, soft at first, like the rustle of leaves. But as the moon rose high, the whispers grew into frenzied murmurs, echoing through the halls. Claire would wake in a cold sweat, heart racing, the shadows feeling alive, as though they held secrets meant only for her. But rather than bravado, panic gripped her. Where were these feelings coming from? What was happening to her sanctuary? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Claire sifted through old papers, the truth unraveled. Notes from her father, fragments of paranoia about the hospital on the town's outskirts, once a place of healing turned sinister. What had he known? What was he involved in? The shadows began to take shape before her eyes, the whispers intensified, now pinning her to the floor with unrelenting pressure. She struggled to breathe, engulfed in the suffocating feeling of being watched. Turning to the townsfolk for reassurance only deepened her isolation. The smiles transformed into tight lips and averted gazes. Eyes that once met hers now displayed suspicion. The townspeople, the epitome of community, were morphing into a jumble of fear and doubt. The curse that loomed over Melrose was real. Claire's heart hammered against her ribcage. Was she truly alone? Or were they all hiding something? In that moment, chaos erupted. A guttural laugh echoed through the hall, a sound that was all too familiar yet utterly foreign. The entity, the darkness she felt stalking her, the very thing that made her skin crawl, was right there. She could almost hear it breathing her name. How could she protect Jake? The horror of standing face to face with an entity that seemed to relish her fear paralyzed her. Claire was caught in a web of dread, the past crashing into her present as her pillars of safety crumbled. And as the darkness closed in, a chilling question echoed inside her mind. If the history of her family was darker than she could ever imagine, how could she save her son from the nightmare already living among them? Claire's heart raced as the oppressive air thickened around her, squeezing her chest until she could barely draw a breath. That laugh, so cruel, so mocking, reverberated in her ears. It came from everywhere and nowhere, a sinister melody that wrapped around her like a noose. She instinctively grabbed for Jake, who stood frozen, his eyes wide with terror. "Stay close, honey," she gasped, pulling him into her arms as she scanned the dimly lit room. The shadows twisted and danced, whispering secrets just beyond her understanding. With each breath, the darkness seemed to pulse, alive and hungry. Claire could feel its presence, a cold breath against her neck, making every hair on her body stand on end. Her thoughts spiraled. Had she lingered too long in the house? Had she unleashed something meant to stay buried? "Mom!" Jake whimpered, his small voice cutting through the cacophony of whispers. "What is happening?" The innocence in his tone shattered Claire's resolve, and for a fleeting moment, she felt the weight of the world crash down on her again. How could she protect him from what she didn't understand? Just stay quiet, she urged, her eyes darting to the clawing shadows. They seemed to slither closer, eager to expose their sinister purpose. She needed to get out of the house, to escape this malevolence that was closing in around them. Her thoughts raced, recalling the notes she'd found. The hospital. Her father's paranoia. What if it all connected? What if the answers lay beyond Melrose? Without warning, the lights flickered, plunging them into brief darkness before the sickly yellow glare returned. Claire gripped Jake's hand tighter. We need to leave now. Just follow me. As they edged toward the door, Claire felt a sharp tug on her heart, as if the house itself was reluctant to let them go. The whispers escalated, overlapping into a deafening roar, words she couldn't quite catch but felt clawing at her mind. Leave, return. What do they want? Jake's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. I don't know, she muttered, desperation creeping into her tone. But I can't let them have you. The front door felt miles away as they moved, shadows coiling at their feet like vipers ready to strike. She forced herself to keep moving, to not break into a full sprint. Frightening Jake could trigger something darker. As they reached the threshold, the door creaked ominously, as if it too had a mind of its own. Just as she grabbed the knob, a bone-chilling cold swept through the air, and a gasp escaped her lips. From the corner of her eye, a dark figure appeared, its form flickering between the shadows and the faint light, barely discernible yet insatiably present. Mom! Look! Jake screamed, pointing to the figure that seemed to loom larger with every heartbeat. Panic surged through Claire, urging her to act as dread slowed time around her. The figure melted into the shadows, only to reappear, inches away, its monstrous face twisting into a malevolent grin that revealed jagged, unnatural teeth. It reached for them, fingers elongated and grotesque, slicing through the air. Run! Claire shouted, shoving the door open, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she pulled Jake with her. They stumbled out into the night, breathless and trembling, but the darkness followed, hungry for their fear. Claire's mind raced. She had to find a way to face this terror, to confront the hidden truths about her family. What had her father discovered in that haunted hospital? Was it possible she could unearth the history holding her and Jake captive? As they ran into the night, shadows danced behind them, the curious whisper tearing at the very fabric of their sanity. The very shadows that once felt like home now transformed into a relentless pursuit. Just as hope began to flicker, the chill returned, and Claire felt a pull back toward the house, toward the dark secrets entwined in her bloodline. What black legacy could possibly await her return? Claire's breath came in gasps, sharp and frantic as she dragged Jake across the yard. The moon hung low, a sickly light that painted everything in shades of dread. Her mind raced, a chaotic whirlpool of thoughts and fears. What was that thing? What did it want? Mom, I can't. Jake started, his voice trembling as he stumbled over the gravel path. Just keep running. Claire urged, tightening her grip on his hand. She cursed herself for not being prepared. For not knowing the dangers lurking within the walls of that grotesque house. Memories of her father's frantic stories flooded back, the frantic claims of things crawling beneath the surface, of secrets best left untouched. The air became thicker as they ran, the darkness creeping ever closer. It felt as if the shadows themselves were trying to absorb them, to trap them again in that damned place. Claire turned, glancing over her shoulder, and her heart dropped. The dark figure stood at the door, silhouetted against the feeble light, watching them with piercing eyes. It seemed to shimmer in and out of existence, like a hallucination. We need to get to the car, Claire hissed, leading Jake toward the driveway. But as they reached it, her heart sank. The car loomed, but the feeling of safety it once provided was nowhere to be found. The engine lay silent, nothing but a shell waiting to be returned to life. Panic twisted her stomach. Mom! Jake cried, an echo of the fear that gripped her. It's coming. Claire forced her eyes to the horizon, seeing only a handful of stars blink above, distant and unhelpful. "Stay here," she commanded, willing herself to stay calm. She dashed toward the car, her shattered breath mixing with the cold air. The keys. Where were the keys? Her hands fumbled in her pockets, her heart racing as time moved like molasses. A laugh sliced through the night, a sound that froze her blood. There it was again. That mocking laugh wrapping around her, fingers of ice gripping her spine. She glanced back, heart hammering in her chest. The figure was no longer at the door, it was moving, gliding across the yard as if weightless. Each step echoed, a steady rhythm that matched the pounding in her head. "Mom, please hurry." Jake whimpered. She patted her coat pockets frantically, trying to bring back the moment of clarity she desperately needed. Then her fingers brushed against the cold metal of the keys. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The figure was closer now, its grotesque features now more than a shadow, a nightmare-given form. It whispered her name, a twisted mockery. "Claire, come home, Jake." She dashed back to grab him, her heart pounding as she pulled him to her side. "We're getting out of here." With trembling hands, she thrust the keys into the ignition. But when she turned the key, the engine sputtered and died. "No! No, no!" she gasped, panic clawing at her throat. She turned the key again, praying. The laugh erupted once more, echoing around them, an unbearable sound that chilled her to her bones. "Stay forever, Mom!" Jake shrieked, his eyes wide with terror. Pointing behind her, he stammered, It's behind you." Claire's heart dropped. She didn't need to turn around to know. The air felt different, thicker with malice, as if the very essence of fear had come to life. She cast a glance over her shoulder, and time stretched. The creature stood inches away, its breath icy and foul, looming like a storm. "Run! Out of the car!" The words tore from her lips as she yanked Jake from his seat. They stumbled away from the vehicle, retracing their steps toward the house, panicked breathing echoing in the deafening silence of the night. The howl of the wind carried their cries, but the whispers were louder now, drowning them in dread. Shadows twisted and turned, creating a chorus around them. "Mom! What do we do?" Jake cried, clinging to her leg. Claire's heart raced. She felt the suffocation of darkness closing around them. "We face it. We have to end this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. As they stood, trembling together, she could feel the force behind the creature, an ancient curse with deep roots in her lineage. There was something in her blood, something that called to it. But in that moment, just as the shadows lunged, a horrific realization dawned on her. "Jake, what if we can't escape our past?" The dark figure surged closer, its jagged teeth glistening, and Claire felt the weight of her family's secrets pressing down. What if the only way out was back in? The shadows swirled with a life of their own, thickening around Claire and Jake as the monstrous figure advanced. Its eyes burned, glowing like embers in the coal-black night. Claire gritted her teeth, adrenaline flooding her veins. "Stay close," she whispered, gripping Jake's shoulder. They turned as one, staggering toward the porch. Every step felt like a battle against the ground pulling them back, as if the earth beneath their feet was determined to keep them tethered to the darkness. "What if it?" Jake started, but Claire silenced him with a look. They had no time for fear to set in. As they reached the porch, ancient creaks echoed through the air, a sound that mingled with the malevolent whispers surrounding them. Claire glanced up at the house, its windows stared like the soulless eyes of a predator. Then, the laughter roared again, peeling back layers of her sanity. "Come home, Claire. It's where you belong." The words twisted and turned, wrapping around her like chains. "Mom, what does it mean?" Jake's voice trembled, a small spark of innocence lost amidst the terror. "It doesn't matter." Claire shot back, forcing her legs to move toward the door. "We have to find a way inside. Are you crazy? He hissed, fear etched on his small face, but in Claire's heart, a flicker of defiance ignited. She led them inside, shoving the door open. The hinges screeched, echoing in the suffocating void. As she stepped over the threshold, dread clawed at her. The stale scent of decay wafted through the air, reminiscent of something long forgotten. It was darker inside than it had been outside, shadows thickening like shadows had shadowed the very light. Claire swore she felt the walls vibrating, as if the house itself were alive. Where do we go? Jake whimpered, clutching her hand tightly. We find the basement, Claire said, her voice steely despite the rising panic within her. That's where her father had spoken of the curse, the source of it all. They moved through the kitchen, each step accompanied by the unsettling crunch of something underfoot. Claire flashed a quick glance at Jake. His eyes mirrored her fear, wide and terrified. She bit back the urge to reassure him. She feared any words would crumble into dust. In the hallway, they reached a door that creaked open ominously, revealing stairs that plunged into darkness. Claire's heart raced anew. Stay behind me, she ordered. Descending the stairs, the air became heavier, laden with a musty odor and something else, a metallic scent that twisted her stomach. Every rung felt like a countdown to something inevitable. Mom, Jake whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence. Not now. Keep going. They reached the bottom, and the darkness enveloped them like a thick fog. Claire fumbled ahead, praying with every heartbeat that her instincts were correct. We must find the source. But then they heard it, a low growl, reverberating through the air, resonating down the walls. Leave, it breathed. Leave while you can. The growl morphed into that same mocking laughter, chilling them to the core. Claire's hands trembled as she navigated the room, searching, feeling her way along the cool stone walls. The feeling of being watched crushed her, gnawing at her sanity. Suddenly, a flash of light shot across the room, illuminating a series of strange symbols carved into the wall. Claire felt an electric charge run through her veins. What did Dad mean by, "The secret holds the key"? Claire murmured, more to herself than anyone else, but the words triggered something deep within her. Jake tugged her arm. Mom, I think it's coming. Claire's blood ran cold at that. I know. Mom, we have to go. She turned, and shaky tendrils of darkness moved closer, inching forward with intent. Each moment stretched painfully, the air dense with an impending doom. What would it take to break the curse? What price would they pay to escape? The creature's growl intensified, echoing their thoughts. And in that heartbeat of silence, as the darkness loomed larger, Claire made a decision. Jake, we'll break it together, she said, gathering strength. She didn't know she had. But the question lingered, heavy and oppressive. What if the secret did not lead them to freedom but to something far worse? Just as they reached for the symbols, the growl morphed into a deafening roar. Desperation flooded Claire's thoughts. What if we're too late? An answering rush of shadows filled the room, swirling like a storm. Claire felt the ground beneath her shift, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just awoken something ancient, something that wouldn't allow them to leave. And then, the house shuddered, as if preparing to swallow them whole. What if the real terror had just begun? The roar shook the very foundations of the house, and Claire felt it like ice water pouring down her spine. The shadows writhed, moving closer, threatening to engulf them. Heart racing, she grabbed Jake's hand tighter, trying to pull him closer to the flickering light that now illuminated the strange symbols on the wall. Mom, what's happening? Jake's voice cracked, laced with sheer panic. Just hold on. Claire shouted over the noise, her own fear surging. They had to focus. With each syllable from the growling darkness, a memory flashed through Claire's mind, the old stories her dad used to tell. A curse sealed away by ancient rituals, depending on blood and sacrifice. Those symbols. They have to mean something, she said, her voice trembling as she studied the carvings. Each one seemed to pulse with a consciousness of its own, a dark energy throbbing that beckoned her closer. Mom, Jake urged, practically tugging at her. The growl was no longer a mere echo. Now it felt like footsteps creeping into their reality, hungry and deliberate. Every instinct within her screamed to retreat, but she couldn't let fear take control. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, letting the symbols guide her. Just then, the laughter returned, sharper now, slicing through the tension like a blade. "You shouldn't have come back, Claire." It shrieked, reverberating off the stone walls around them. "Shut up!" Claire shouted, defiance igniting within her. "You don't own me." But the shadows rushed in, thickening like a dense fog. Claire's fingers brushed against the symbols, and she felt a wave of heat surge through her. They weren't just designs, they pulsed with energy, begging for her to unlock them. "Focus, Claire. We need to do something." Jake's urgency was palpable, ripping through the chaos. A memory struck her, a song her father would hum when he spoke about the curse. It was a melody of hope and tragedy, and it brought to mind a semblance of power she didn't know she had. Could it work? Could she harness it somehow? "Jake, if we can make a sound, if we can sing," she began, doubt creeping in like the shadows. "But what if it makes it worse?" He whispered, always the pragmatist, always clinging to reason. "I can't give in to that. If I stay silent, we lose." She replied, then forced her voice to rise above the growl, ringing out a single note, her voice shaky but certain. Jake caught on, his young voice joining hers, trembling but steady. Together, they created a fragile harmony, and as they sang, the symbols began to flare with light, illuminating the room with a glow that pushed back the encroaching darkness. The growl faltered, replaced by confusion, a split second where despair turned to uncertainty. "No!" The voice shrieked, and the house quaked, rattling as if the very structure resented their defiance. Claire pushed forward, urgency replacing fear. "Keep going, Jake. Don't stop." They sang louder, their combined voices resonating within the chamber. The shadows jolted, shrinking momentarily against the growing light. But then, it struck again. An unnerving wave of cold surged through Claire, snatching her breath. The laughter returned, now mocking, taunting. "You foolish children. You think you can break the curse that binds me? What's your name?" Claire demanded, eyes scanning the cryptic symbols, searching for connection, for understanding. "What is this curse?" "Names hold power, child. But you will never know mine." It boomed, the ground trembling beneath their feet. As the shadows lunged, Claire's heart raced. The light from the symbols flickered, and with it, hope wavered. What if their courage unleashed something even darker? The roar intensified, drowning out their voices, and the shadows twisted violently. A sense of urgency gripped Claire. They needed to finish this. With a new resolve, Claire called out through the chaos, "Let us know your name, and we'll end your torment." A moment of silence passed, thick and heavy. The shadows paused, hesitating, as if contemplating her offer. Then, with a force that felt like a punch to the gut, the darkness surged forward. Claire felt Jake's grip slip, and everything froze. Just as everything began to unravel, she noticed it, a glow erupting from the very core of the symbols. This was at the moment of truth that could either bind them to the curse or unlock their salvation. "Jake, now!" she yelled, but the shadows collapsed like a wave. "Mom!" Jake's terrified scream punctuated the air. The last fills of light shimmered between shadow and hope, and the creature howled one last time, sending a shudder down Claire's spine, clinging to the only thought that mattered. Were they truly about to claim their end, or was it just the beginning? As darkness engulfed her vision, Claire grappled with a chilling question: what awaited them on the other side? The air froze, thick with darkness as Claire fought against its suffocating grip. The last vestiges of light trembled, flickering like a candle on the verge of extinction. Panic surged through her as she realized the roar was not just sound, it was like echoes of lives long lost. "Hold on, Jake!" she screamed, but the shadows clawed at her mind, whispering secrets that made her knees shake. She could feel their presence, ancient and vengeful, wrapping around her like the mist of a haunted forest. A terrifying thought crashed into her mind: maybe she had made a grave mistake in reaching into the past. Maybe her father's stories were more than myths, they were warnings. With her heart hammering, she turned to Jake, but his face was obscured by swirling shadows. "Jake!" she yelled, her voice breaking. His eyes were wide, reflecting both fear and confusion. She could barely see him, the darkness clawing and twisting around them like the gnarled roots of an ancient tree. Suddenly, a creeping cold wrapped around her feet, causing the hairs on her arms to stand on end. The symbols on the wall flared brighter, almost as if they were reacting to her fear. But could they illuminate a path or simply reveal more horrors? "Mom, it's too much." Jake's voice, choked with terror, sliced through the chaos. They had to act fast. A desperate thought seized Claire. "We must focus on the light. It's connected to the curse." But as she tried to pull Jake closer into the fragments of luminescence, something massive surged forth from the darkness, a figure cloaked in shadow, its features indistinct but terrifyingly real. It moved without sound, like a predator stalking its prey. "You will pay for your trespass," it growled, the echo rumbling deep in her chest. Claire's breath hitched, fear paralyzing her limbs for a moment. The room trembled violently, dust raining down from the ceiling. "Take my hand." She reached out, desperation rising. Jake hesitated, but then, with a gulp, he grabbed her outstretched hand. Now holding each other firmly, they turned toward the light. "Together!" Claire shouted. "We can break it." The shadows shrieked in fury, and a violent wind whirled within the chamber, deafening. Jake squeezed tighter, his small hand trembling in hers. The symbols shone brighter still, almost blinding, as Claire and Jake summoned every ounce of strength they had. Another roar exploded through the room, shaking the stones as if they were quake-torn earth. "Your voices cannot save you." But Claire would not yield. "You're wrong," she cried. "We're not afraid of you." Their voices mingled with the vibrating energy of the symbols, and together they pushed against the advancing darkness. The light erupted, filling every shadowy corner, revealing horror faces twisted in agony, lost souls trapped within the walls. They were not mere shadows, they were the remnants of a curse far more complex than Claire ever imagined. The ground splintered beneath them, the sound like crackling bones. Claire gasped as the shadowy figure lunged, reaching for Jake, but the bright energy flared with a deafening pulse, momentarily holding it at bay. "Let go of the past. You can't hold on to this pain," Claire shouted, fueling their resolve. The shadows paused. For a fleeting instant, doubt rippled through the dark figure's form, as though it recognized a soul trapped within its own curse. That moment hung heavy, thick with tension. "Mom, what do we do?" Jake's voice trembled, breaking her concentration. But before Claire could finish her thought, the shadows converged with a ferocity she never expected. It was like being swallowed by a monstrous wave that pulled her down into the abyss, spinning and dragging them into a void. Even as the light diminished into nothingness, Claire felt an unexpected warmth, an echo of possibility. Then silence. Complete, disorienting silence. Claire strained for a breath, her body floating in an abyss of uncertainty. Had they succeeded? Had they failed? Or were they simply part of a nightmare they couldn't escape? "We're still together," Jake whispered, but his voice was distant, buried beneath layers of darkness. Suddenly, a faint glimmer pierced the obscurity, growing brighter and flickering like a candle flame in the wind. But then the warmth turned icy. A cold whisper resounded, "Welcome to your true fate." Claire's heart raced as the light revealed silhouettes surrounding them, waiting, watching. What had they awakened? Fear clenched her stomach as she realized they were no longer just defending themselves, but facing something infinitely larger than they could ever understand. The light pulsed in sharp bursts, illuminating the surrounding entities that loomed with lifeless eyes. Each shadow had a shape, a face, a sorrowful narrative etched into their features. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she willed herself to comprehend what they had awakened. They were not just trapped souls, they were watchers, guardians of horrors beyond imagination. "Mom, what are they?" Jake's voice trembled, thick with fear as he pressed closer to Claire, seeking refuge. "Jake, we need to stay calm, we need to," but the words melted away in the chilling grip of an unnatural terror. The figures began to whisper, their voices a blend of tortured sorrow and rage. Each syllable wrapped around Claire like tendrils of fog, echoing tales of betrayal, loss, and relentless vengeance. One shadow broke from the group, gliding toward them, its elongated form flickering in the light. The once muted shape sharpened, a gaunt face emerging from the shadows. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly hunger. "You shouldn't have come here. This place isn't for the living." The air thickened, suffocating and electric. Claire's mind raced. "We didn't mean to disturb anything. We were looking for answers." Her voice rang out, more desperate than assured. The shadow chuckled, a haunting sound that sent chills darting down her spine. "Answers? You seek answers? Those who enter this realm do not often walk away." It leaned closer, revealing fragmented memories that flickered behind its hollow gaze, images of pain embedded in its form. Jake squeezed Claire's hand tighter, his breath shallow. "Why are they showing us this? What do they want?" I don't know." Claire's heart pounded, pumping dread through her veins. "But we have to try to communicate. Maybe if we understand, we can." Before she could finish, the room shook violently, echoing the despair that radiated through the shadows' chilling laughter. "Communication? Do you think words can undo centuries of torment? You have awakened us, and now you shall know our suffering." The air turned icy. The light began to flicker again as the figures drew closer, their reach expanding, surrounding Claire and Jake in a tightening grip. They were closing in, swarming around them like predatory spirits, each filled with anger and despair that merged into a singular, oppressive force. "Mom!" Jake screamed as shadows seemed to blend into one enormous, writhing mass of anguish. Claire could hardly differentiate between the whispers anymore. They swirled and twisted into a symphony of loss, all striking her core like sharpened knives. Then, from the center of the swirling mass, one figure stepped forward. It stood taller than the others, imposing yet sorrowful. "You have this chance, seek the heart of the curse or perish like those who came before you." Claire's mind raced. What was the heart of the curse? How could they break free from this doom? Time was slipping away. The light was flickering dangerously, and the shadows were hungry. "Jake, listen!" she shouted, cutting through the chaos. "We have to find what they're afraid of. The heart must be hidden in this place, and we need to uncover it." Jake's eyes, full of fear, locked onto hers. "What if we can't? What if terror clamped down on Claire's throat?" It was a risk, but there was little choice. They could swim against the tide of shadows or drown within them. "No, we can't think that way. We have to try together." In the moment of their resolve, the darkness hissed, a sound like shivering thunder. Shadows surged forward, the figures screaming out their anguish. Whispering echoes promised they would find the heart, but at what cost? The ground beneath them began to pulsate, vibrating with energy as the room began to shift and twist around them. The symbols on the walls glowed ominously, signaling their impending doom or perhaps a path to salvation. "Tell me, what do I need to do?" Claire murmured into the churning shadows, sensing the darkness closing in. The vibrant light flickered out, leaving them barely illuminated by the surrounding menace, but then, just as the oppressive figures wrapped tighter, a luminescent fragment broke through the mass, a glowing sigil etched in the floor beneath their feet. Wave after wave of luminescence pulsed from it, illuminating the room in a heartbeat. "Jake, look!" Claire shouted, hope woven into her voice, as she pointed at the sigil. But just as she felt the warmth of possibility, the shadows recoiled, angry and chaotic. "No! The figure cried out, "You cannot disrupt what is meant to be." That was when the shadows charged. Fear flooded through Claire. They had ignited something ancient. Would they be able to contain it, or were they already too late? The shadows thundered around them. It was time to confront their fate. As their hands tightened and their summoned courage ignited, they pushed forward. What they hoped to uncover soon loomed nearer, yet draped in hesitation. Would they find salvation or succumb to the darkness that sought their souls? The pulsing glow from the sigil bathed the room in an eerie light, revealing the twisted, anguished faces of the shadows, now retreating into the surrounding darkness. Claire clutched Jake's hand tighter, her heart racing as the glowing symbol pulsed with energy, as if it were alive, beckoning them closer. "What does it mean?" Jake whispered, his wide eyes scanning their surroundings. "Are we supposed to?" "Maybe we need to touch it," Claire interrupted, her mind racing. The sigil felt like a barrier against the encroaching darkness, a lifeline amidst the chaos. "We have to find out what it does." Before she could question it further, she stepped forward, dragging Jake with her. The air around them thickened, crackling with an energy that sent sharp jabs of electricity through her veins. Each step felt like walking through frozen fog, fear wrapping around her lungs. Would they be consumed before they reached the truth? Just as they were about to make contact, the shadows surged again, a wave of darkness crashing towards them. The whispers morphed into screams, a cacophony of rage and despair that clawed at Claire's sanity. "You defy the terrible past. You will suffer as the others did." "Mom, please." Jake pulled back, his fear palpable. "I don't want to die here." "Jake, we can't stop now." Claire's voice cracked, desperation fueling her resolve. "We have to do this." With one swift motion, she pressed her palm against the glowing sigil. A rush of warmth enveloped her, cascading through her body like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The shadows recoiled, their screams morphing into a low, feral growl, rumbling like distant thunder. Suddenly, visions exploded in her mind. She saw the figure of a woman, chained in the depths of this very chamber, her eyes wide with panic. "You are not alone." The woman cried out, her voice piercing through the veil of time. "Help us break the curse." Claire gasped as images swirled, dancing spirits, a grand celebration turned to horror, betrayal and sacrifice. The cycle of torment became clear. This place was a tomb, cursed by the souls wronged long ago. The light from the sigil flared brighter, and with it, the echoes of those lost raced back into Claire's consciousness. "You must find the source. The heart of the curse lies within the walls. Seek the relic that binds us." "Mom!" Jake screamed, breaking her concentration as the darkness lashed out again, this time striking her shoulder with a searing burn that made her instinctively jerk back. The sigil dimmed, flickering dangerously like a candle trapped in the wind. "We don't have much time," Claire shouted. "It's them or us. Where do we even look?" Jake's voice wavered, tinged with panic. The shadows began to converge once more, their growls growing louder, feeding off their dread. Above. Claire pointed at the vaulted ceiling, where shapes twisted and writhed in the darkness. There must be something, a trapdoor or a hidden place. As they raced for the towering wall, Claire's breath came in sharp bursts. The shadows were relentless, clawing at their heels, each footstep drumming out a warning. She could hear their whispers again, threats and pleas bleeding together. "The truth will consume you. You are not strong enough." With every ounce of strength, they reached the wall. Claire searched frantically, her hands grazing the rough stone, the temperature dropping as the shadows surrounded them. "There!" she shouted, her fingers finding a loose brick. It shifted slightly, almost beckoning her to reveal its secret. "Mom, hurry!" Just as she pressed the brick inward, a scream erupted from the shadows, and the ground shook. The wall broke open, revealing a dark passageway that plunged into unknown depths, swirling with whispers of the souls trapped within. "Jump!" Claire yelled, grasping Jake's arm, and together they leaped into the darkness, hearts pounding, time slipping away. The moment they landed, silence enveloped them like a shroud. It felt suffocating, the stillness making her skin prickle. They had crossed into something deeper, something ancient and immensely powerful. What now? Jake whispered, his voice trembling in the oppressive void. The shadows pulsed at the entrance behind them, as if conferring in hushed tones, plotting revenge. Claire squinted into the darkness ahead, something glimmering faintly in the distance. We find the heart before it finds us. But as they ventured further down the corridor, a voice resonated in the stillness, cold and echoing. You should have stayed away. What awaited them in the depths of the passage? Would they uncover the heart of the curse, or were they walking straight into a trap? Claire swallowed hard, her throat dry as the weight of the darkness pressed in from all sides. The faint glimmer ahead seemed just out of reach, luring them into the void. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. Yet, something deeper urged her forward, a mixture of fear and fierce determination ignited in her chest. Jake, hold my hand tight, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The shroud of silence made her skin crawl. She could almost feel the shadows brushing against her, teasing at her sanity. With a shaky breath, they stepped cautiously into the corridor, the ground beneath them cold and threatening. Each footfall echoed unnervingly, the dark walls holding their breath, waiting. Claire's heart thumped like a war drum. What if we shouldn't be here? Jake murmured, his youthful voice quaking. This doesn't feel right. It has to be right, Claire shot back, needing the conviction. We're going to break this curse. For those trapped here, and for us. But as she spoke, the faint light pulsated violently, illuminating grotesque carvings that adorned the walls, depicting figures in eternal agony. Faces twisted in torment. A chilling realization clawed at her, they were not just in a tomb. They were in a monument to despair. Look! Claire said, her voice barely a whisper now. She pointed toward the glimmers that flickered closer, revealing an altar at the end of the passage, surrounded by symbols identical to the sigil they had encountered before. What are those? Jake swallowed, eyes wide with terror. Relics, Claire whispered, certainty flooding her. Maybe these are what the spirits need to break the curse. As they hurried towards it, a sudden draft swept through, carrying with it an angry hiss that made the hairs on Claire's arms stand on end. Get out! Leave this place! Jake's grip tightened on her hand. Mom, we need to go. Now! He was shaking, the fear in his eyes slicing through her resolve. No, Claire insisted, determination morphing into stubbornness. We can't. We have to at least see what it is. If they left now, they'd only run from the darkness, and what good would that do? They approached the altar, the air thickening with tension. A soft glow emanated from something atop it, a small, ornate box, intricately detailed, perhaps the source of the curse. Its edges were sharp, as if it were begging to be touched. Jake, it's here. But as she reached out to lift the box, the whispers intensified, rising to a deafening crescendo. No! You must not disturb what is sealed. Claire froze, heart racing. A shadow flared behind them, a hulking monstrosity emerging from the dark. Night-like tendrils snaked toward them, sharp and cold, hungry for their fear. Panic gripped her, constricting her throat. Run! Claire shouted, snatching the box. Its weight was strangely comforting, yet alarmingly heavy, as if it contained all the anguish trapped within the walls. She didn't know what would happen next, but something told her they had awakened a vengeful presence. Where do we go? Jake yelled over the shrill cries of the shadows. Back! Claire barked, adrenaline surging through her. They turned, dodging the snapping tendrils that lunged at them, retreating down the corridor as darkness roared angrily behind them, desperate to reclaim what they had dared to touch. The pulse of the sigil grew weak, and with it, the shadows surged forward, swarming ever closer, until they felt like a living entity writhing, clawing to pull them back into the depths. You cannot escape. Just when the light seemed to flicker out completely, Claire stumbled backwards, catching her breath. What lay behind them was not armed with empty threats, it had their names tattooed on its malevolent heart. Over there. Jake pointed toward a small crack in the stone wall, open just wide enough for them to squeeze through. Claire shot him a glance, acknowledging the risk. They could be trapped, but the growing darkness clawed at their heels. Now or never. With no time to spare, they dove toward the opening, squeezing through just as a shadowed hand reached forward. The terrifying essence of despair shrieked in frustration as they slipped away. What awaited them on the other side? Was it safety, or a deeper layer of terror lurking just out of sight? The shadows wouldn't stop hunting, they were determined to reclaim their prey. Claire squirmed through the narrow crack, Jake's small frame wedged against her side. Time felt suspended as they slipped into the dim alcove, the shifting gloom behind them growling in furious frustration. The moment they entered, cold air washed over them, drawing out the stifling heat of terror. They stumbled into a chamber that felt both familiar and alien, another part of the house, but unlike the oppressive confines they just escaped. Are we safe? Jake whispered, his voice filled with unease. The air hummed with an energy that made Claire's skin prickle. I don't know, she admitted, eyes darting around the room. Flickering candles lined the walls, their light revealing more carving stories etched in stone, of battles fought and blood spilled. A sense of heaviness pressed around them, but another feeling pulsed in the air, hope. Rushing over to the lit candles, Claire was drawn to the altar embellished with bizarre figures, the very symbol from the wall and the sigil they found earlier. She held tight to the ornate box, feeling its comforting weight in her grasp. If this box holds just a piece of their suffering, what if we can use it? Use it how? Jake's fear was palpable. I think we're meant to free them, Jake. She held up the box as a determination ignited within her. If this cursed history is what's binding us, maybe we can reverse it. Maybe we can undo the wrongs. Suddenly, the shadows slithered closer, creeping into the alcove, hungry and relentless. You dare to disturb us further? The shadows warped into a single figure, more massive than before. Its glowing, empty eyes remained fixated on them, as if it could sense their beating hearts. Claire took a deep breath, pushing down her fear. No more. You must release your hold on this place. The figure swirled, tendrils reaching out. You are the bloodline tied to this very pain. Then let us break the cycle. Claire shouted, brandishing the box. This can't happen anymore. We aren't your prisoners. In that moment, something shifted in the air, an electric pulse veering into the room. The shadows hesitated, as if considering her words. Break the curse? You think you can set us free? Yes. Claire replied, trembling yet steady in her resolve. By facing the truth. By understanding where you come from. With a sudden rush, the darkness lunged. Realizing the time to act was fleeting, Claire threw the box open. A blinding light emanated from it, spilling across the room, wrapping around them. Memories surged forth, visions resurfacing in a whirlwind, faces filled with anguish appeared as if reaching out for salvation. Look! Claire beckoned, as golden images flashed before her, fragments of a tumultuous past, betrayal, an ancient ritual gone wrong, an unjust sacrifice. These are your stories. You're connected to us, and it's time to heal. The shadows recoiled, swirling faster, as Claire's revelation channeled through their original pain. Your past is tangled within our veins, and if we understand, maybe you can finally let go. For what felt like an eternity, the shadows writhed, the air thick with sorrow echoing in their mournful cries. You speak of freedom. But can you hold the weight of our anguish? Yes. Claire yelled again, pulling Jake close. Together, let us lift the burden. With hearts racing, they joined hands. Claire held the box between them, its light flaring brilliantly, illuminating the whole chamber. Can you feel it, Jake? Let it guide us. As they closed their eyes, the whispers harmonized into a melody, a song steeped in sorrow and longing. Each note resonated, reverberating through the shadows, entwining Claire, Jake, and the imprisoned souls in an unbreakable thread of hope. Release your pain. Remember the joy of living, the laughter, the love. Then, in an instant of pure clarity, the tendrils of darkness began to loosen. The shadows, which once threatened to consume them, flickered, flickering like dying embers. What is this? The figure hissed, its form shrinking. You cannot, you will not. Yes, we will. Claire shouted, the warmth of collective memories flooding them both. As the final embraces of light erupted from the box, Claire and Jake faced the specter. Let go. You are not alone. The last echo of their song caused the darkness to convulse, splintering into fragments of light. With a great roar, the figure disintegrated. Streams of light shot upwards, illuminating the chamber before exploding into a kaleidoscope of colors. The old patterns etched into the walls began to erase themselves, a viewer suddenly granted freedom. In that moment, the shadows vanished completely, absorbed by the pure and vibrant light that filled the chamber. Claire and Jake stood, breathless but unified, the silence replaced by a profound stillness that healed the cracks in the air. They were no longer bound to the curse. Did we do it? Jake breathed, hope mingling with disbelief. I think we did, Claire said softly, tears of relief streaming down her face. The weight of despair lifted, they were finally free. They turned toward the exit, emerging into the warm light of dawn. The house, a structure now stripped of its darkness, stood proud against the brightening sky. Together, they took a breath of fresh air, each exhale dispelling everything that had haunted them. As Claire looked at Jake, she whispered, whatever is ahead, we'll face it together. And as they walked away from the past, the winds of Melrose carried with them a new song, a melody of hope that rang clear through the town, echoing loud enough for every lingering shadow to finally find peace. Now, as their journey concludes here, we urge you to reflect on every cherished moment shared within the echoing shadows of your own life. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will ignite your spirit. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. We're counting on you. And don't keep this story to yourself. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. The community is waiting. Finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need this conclusion in their lives. Don't let them miss out. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now.